The Gray Zone has just dropped a major bombshell, an article from Max Blumenthal and Anya Parampil that reveals conversations that may have happened prior to the death of Charlie Kirk. This is a big news. I hope this article gets more attention, and it kind of points towards what I was saying before about what is the real reason for all of this happening. Meanwhile, we are seeing people on the right, people on the left go back and forth with each other on social media. And I think a lot of people are not doing what I tell you to do, which is to follow the money, to pay very close attention to the big picture. First and foremost, before we get into that article, of course, they have arrested a suspect in regards to the killing of Charlie Kirk. He was turned in by his family, just FYI. And so I want you to understand, I saw the statements that were made and they said, we got him. It's not that they went out there and did this awesome detective work and found him. His family turned him in. His name is Tyler Robinson. Let's go ahead and get into that, and then we'll dive into this bombshell from the Gray Zone.
I want to take a second to issue a retraction in regards to the alleged killer of Charlie Kirk. We're being told that it was not an Israeli conspiracy. It was, according to the FBI, the act of a lone gunman named Tyler Robinson, a deranged lone gunman who just happened to have not one, but two patsies in the crowd. We're also now being told that it was his father, Matt Robinson, now hailed as the father of justice, who turned his son into the authorities. In a press conference shortly thereafter, FBI Director Kash Patel proudly announced that the suspect was apprehended in record time, quote, in less than 36 hours, 33 to be precise. According to CNN, a family member told investigators that Robinson had, quote, become more political in recent years, and that the authorities had also discovered anti-fascist messages engraved on the ammunition. Prime Minister Netanyahu went on Fox News, though, to claim that Charlie Kirk was assassinated by a combination of, quote, radical Islamists and ultra-progressives. Now, in terms of the murder weapon, the FBI stated that they found the shooter's rifle in the woods, fully assembled. And here is Robinson caught on CCTV footage making that getaway from the rooftop with said rifle.
Yeah, as you can tell here, there seems to be a book bag in his hand, but they can disassemble those rifles and put them into a book bag. But why would you disassemble it and then put it back together? It reeks. This story really reeks. In my opinion, guys, something is rotten in Denmark with this particular narrative.
Yes, people have been telling me that the barrel can be disassembled in seconds, which he then put back together in the woods to hide it from authorities. So yeah, that's it. We got him. Now, no more questions, please.
Yeah, shout out to James Lee there for that quick vid. I think he did this very well. Now, from what I understand, there are numerous reports that are saying that he was a registered Republican. I also saw another report that said that the shooter was registered no party affiliation. So I don't know the truth there on that at this point in time, but they did say that the family were Republicans. His father was a law enforcement officer. Another thing that is a bombshell dropped here. But I don't believe that he did this on his own. 22-year-old kid, don't believe it. I don't know what you guys believe. I believe he did have some help. And speaking of that help, one of the statements that came from the FBI is that there were messages on his Discord that alluded to what he was planning to do. Now, if you just go with that narrative, I'm pretty sure you're like, okay, well, that makes sense. They got the evidence that they need. But there's just one problem. Discord is saying the exact opposite. That's right. There was a statement that was released from Discord. Check this out. Shout out to Propaganda & Co. If you guys aren't following them, you need to. Very weird. The government claims the FBI took images of communications between Tyler Robinson and his roommate about the gun, its location, watching it, and changing clothes. But Discord says these messages didn't take place via Discord. So why did the FBI say they did? So let's look at the statement from Discord here. We are deeply saddened by this tragedy and extend our condolences to the Kirk family and everyone affected. In the course of our investigation, We identified a Discord account associated with the suspect, but have found no evidence that the suspect planned this incident or promoted violence on Discord. The messages referenced in recent reporting about planning details do not appear to be Discord messages. They were communications between the suspect's roommate and a friend after the shooting, where the roommate was recounting the contents of a note the suspect had left elsewhere. We have removed the suspect's account for violating our off-platform behavior policy. So yeah, Discord does have an off-platform behavior policy. So if you were to say like, like violent things or whatever, um, even if it's off Discord via text messages or whatever, they can still remove you from Discord. So that the messages don't have to be on their platform. But that brings up another question. Why did the FBI say that those messages were on Discord, and Discord is saying the exact opposite, that those messages did not exist on their platform? So as I said, folks, something is rotten here. Something is rotten in the state of Denmark. These stories just do not add up. One article says the party affiliation was Republican Party. Another article says he was registered no party affiliation. There are a lot of stories out there right now, and people are getting really confused. There was a picture that is going around on social media of him wearing a Trump t-shirt. That has been debunked, that was AI, that the t-shirt that he was wearing in that video was actually just a plain red t-shirt. So you have to be really careful about the images and the messages that are out there online right now, guys. People are posting some of any and everything. So just FYI. But that brings me back to the why. As I told you when I first reported this story, I believe that this was bigger than people are making it out to be. I did not believe that it was just one lone, gunman out there just says, yeah, I don't like this guy, so this is what I'm going to do. I always tell you to follow the money. And when it comes down to it, the truth hurts. And somebody did follow the money, and that is the gray zone. Max Blumenthal and Anya Parampil just dropped a major article on Friday that gets into some of the details of the money. What was happening behind the scenes with Charlie Kirk and his donors? What was happening behind the scenes with Charlie Kirk and Donald Trump in regards to Israel? Let's get into this information here from the Gray Zone. Again, if you have not read this article, you need to read it. It is really good. I think they did great work here. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to be reaching out to Max and Anya. Charlie Kirk refused Netanyahu funding offer, was frightened by pro-Israel forces before death, friend reveals. So let's get into this. This was the first time I heard that Netanyahu offered funding to Charlie Kirk. A Trump insider and a longtime friend of Charlie Kirk tells the Gray Zone how the assassinated conservative leader's turning point on Israeli influence provoked a private backlash from Netanyahu's allies that left him angry and afraid. Let's get into this. Charlie Kirk rejected an offer earlier this year from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to arrange a massive new infusion of Zionist money into his Turning Point USA organization. Now, Turning Point is America's largest conservative youth association, according to a longtime friend of the slain commenter, speaking on the condition of anonymity. The source told the Gray Zone that the late pro-Trump influencer believed that Netanyahu was trying to cow him into silence as he began to publicly question Israel's overwhelming influence in Washington and demand more space to criticize it. Okay, pause here for just a second. So first and foremost, I mean, we all know, if you've been following Gaza and you've been following commentators and how they've been covering it, Charlie Kirk has said some very disgusting things about Palestinian people, very Islamophobic. We can go on and on and on. Supported what Israel was doing in Gaza publicly. But what was happening behind the scenes? This brings to question many things. As I've told you guys before, everything does not happen on camera. There are many of us that are in this political commentary space, and we have a camera in front of us from time to time, but we also have a life off of that camera. And I think that from what I have been gathering, and I'll show you more information to go along with this article as well, it seems as though, as I pointed out the other day when I covered the story of his killing, it seems as though he was starting to ask questions. And one of the things that I will say is this: sometimes in certain organizations or certain spaces, it is even considered shameful for you to start to ask questions. We see this sometimes with religion. I told you guys before my own personal story and journey in the Pentecostal church, where the moment I started to ask questions, it was like, okay, well, you're a problem, you know. Not to say make that same comparison, obviously, with what happened with Charlie Kirk, but in some spaces, when you start asking questions, it's a problem. We're talking about an organization here that was very successful, from what I've seen, with being able to recruit young conservatives, particularly on those college campuses. I told you before, that is something that Charlie Kirk was really good about doing, going across the country and getting the youth on board with the conservative message, conservative politics, through Turning Point USA. He was the biggest voice in doing that. I think he was more successful at doing that than some of his counterparts, like some of the people like or some of his comrades like Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens. Yeah, they've done that as well. But from the numbers, it looks like he was more successful at doing that. And him starting to ask questions about what Israel was doing, or U.S. money going to Israel, obviously would cause a problem. And this is what I was pointing to before. You guys need to think about this. The fact that right after Charlie Kirk died, why was Benjamin Netanyahu going on to corporate media, this corporate media press tour, to talk about this letter that Charlie Kirk supposedly wrote him that we didn't even get to read? The letter was not on the screen, not on the teleprompter. He just said, I'm reading it now, and we're just supposed to believe what he said, the words that just came out of his mouth, without looking at that letter ourselves. Benjamin Netanyahu is out on this press tour to do damage control, right? And people are saying, well, he said publicly that Israel had nothing to do with this. You think he would go to Fox News and all these different corporate media outlets and say, yeah, it was us? Come on, put two and two together. Let's go on a little bit more here. In the weeks leading up to his September 10th assassination, Kirk had become to loathe the Israeli leader, regarding him as a bully. This is coming from their source. Kirk was disgusted by what he witnessed inside the Trump administration, where Netanyahu sought to personally dictate the president's personal decisions and weaponize Israeli assets like billionaire donor Miriam Adelson to keep the White House firmly under its thumb. So remember, Charlie Kirk was an advisor to President Donald Trump. So there are things that he may have seen that happened behind the scenes that we have not seen and we will never see because it wasn't on camera. Goes on to say here, scroll down. According to Kirk's friend, who also enjoyed access to President Trump and his inner circle, Kirk strongly warned Trump last June against bombing Iran on Israel's behalf. Charlie was the only person who did that. They said, recalling how Trump barked at him in response and angrily shut down the conversation. So we even see there seemed to be some friction here between Donald Trump and Charlie Kirk behind the scenes. Of course, they're not going to tell you these things publicly, right? The source believes the incident confirmed in Kirk's mind that the president of the United States had fallen under the control of a malign foreign power and was leading his own country into a series of disastrous conflicts. By the following month, Kirk had become the target of a sustained private campaign of intimidation and free-floating fury by wealthy and powerful allies of Netanyahu, figures he described in an interview as Jewish leaders and stakeholders. He was afraid of them, the source emphasized. Turning Point USA, the rift with Israel widens. Kirk was 18 years old when he launched TPUSA in 2012. From its inception, his career was propelled by Zionist donors who showered his young organization with money through neoconservative outfits like David Horowitz Freedom Center. He repaid his wealthy backers over the years by unleashing a relentless firehouse of anti-Palestinian and Islamophobic diatribes, accepting propaganda trips to Israel, and sternly shutting down nationalist forces challenging his support for Israel during TPUSA events. In the Trump era, a few American Gentiles had proved more valuable to the self-proclaimed Jewish state than Charlie Kirk. But Israel's genocide assault on the besieged Gaza Strip drove an unprecedented backlash within grassroots right-wing circles, where only 24% of young Republicans now sympathize with Israel over Palestinians. Kirk began to shift. So October 7th kind of changed everything, right? Like, we have already seen a split there happening within the Trump base, where some conservatives still support Israel, and others started to speak out. Others started to say, listen, they are killing children over there. I am pro-life. This isn't right. Some of the people that spoke out were conservative commentators. Of course, I think Candace Owens was one of the first ones to publicly come forward and say, I am not comfortable with what is happening to kids in Gaza. She lost her job at the Daily Wire after that. So we saw this split start to happen. And then what happened from that point in time is that some, MAGA supporters decided to side along with Candace and follow her on her journey of doing her own show on her own channel. And others chose to remain with the Daily Wire and continue to watch Ben Shapiro and the rest of his ilk. Having someone like Charlie Kirk decide, wait a minute, I don't know how I feel about this anymore, that would obviously be a problem if you're trying to recruit young people into a movement, conservative party, and to have that support for Israel. That is a problem. But at the end of the day, this all comes back to the money. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the things I stress very much on this show is that I don't have sponsors. I don't take billionaire money. I don't take millionaire money. This is an independent outlet. And the reason behind that is because with that money comes influence. We have already seen this with the story that I covered about David Pakman and Brian Tyler Cohen taking dark money. There is influence attached to that. Once you are in bed with these people, and you decide to take a different position, or you decide, you know what, I don't know if I want this funding, which it appears, according to this article, Charlie Kirk refused that funding from Benjamin Netanyahu, you are considered a problem. And I'll reiterate again, I'm not here to tell you to mourn Charlie Kirk. Like I said before, and I'll say it again, you cannot expect the Black community to mourn Charlie Kirk. You cannot expect that to happen. There may be certain individuals that do it, but as a community, you cannot, look upon us to have that type of empathy. But the reality is, if you follow the money, a lot of times I think that you will reach your answer. It gets into how he started to call out Jeffrey Epstein as an asset. We went over that before. And then it gets into the Tucker Carlson conversation, which I'm going to show you in just a second, as well as what Candace Owens said about having a spiritual transformation, etc. So there's a lot said here. There is currently no evidence of an Israeli government role of Kirk's assassination. However, that has not stopped thousands of social media influencers and users from speculating that the pro-Trump operatives shifting views on the issue contributed in some way to his death. Yeah, these are things a lot of us have been talking about. What I like about this article is that they don't come out and say, they're not like, well, we know for sure that Israel did this. They don't do that. What they are doing is they're showing you what's being said behind the scenes, which a lot of us did not know about. And they're showing you how the public is viewing all of this. But not taking that money is very damning. So when you have a moment, read this article. I'll be sure to put the link to the article there in the chat. But you are starting to see a lot more truth is coming out. Now, to add on to that Gray Zone article, there was something that Candace Owens said in her recent video when she was talking about the death of Charlie Kirk, which kind of, goes along with what that source told Max Blumenthal and Anya Parampil. Listen to this. It's sped up, so just FYI.
We're wrong, and we laughed at how wrong it was when people thought that when I had made up my mind about Israel, that Charlie and me fell apart. Nope, never, not for a second. I said, it's the easiest decision ever, because Charlie knew who I was and I knew who he was. I said, Charlie, this is where I'm at, and there's no room for movement. And you tell your whoever that needs to hear it, whatever you need to tell them, because we're always going to be brothers and sisters. We're always going to be brother and sister. And we would talk about things and debate things behind the scenes. And I think my perspective was as it's been throughout our relationship. You might not get it now, Charlie, but you will. I'm only a few years older than you, but I think you're gonna see things my way. And I think in the end, Charlie was going through a spiritual transformation. I don't think I know it. He was going through a lot, and there was a lot of pressure. And it's hard for me to watch the people who were pressuring him, I don't know, just say the things that they're saying. There's something about it that just feels really fake.
So one thing I want to add here, again, Candace is someone who was very close to Charlie Kirk. So if anyone would have known like some of the things that were happening behind the scenes, she would have known that, right? So just keep that in mind. Like I said, you ain't got to like her, but the reality is she would know what was happening behind the scenes. So she says that he was starting to go through a spiritual transformation. Charlie Kirk was still friends with Candace Owens, despite her position on Israel, despite her, saying she was against killing kids in Gaza. It sounds like, according to Candace, they still remained close. So keep that in mind.
To me, and they would have allowed him to lose and wanted him to lose everything for changing or even slightly modifying an opinion, and then to see them doing what they're doing today, it's hurtful to me. It's very hurtful to me. But I don't want today to be about anything other than you guys knowing that Charlie really was an amazing person. He was like, we were really close, and he was my best friend and my brother. And I will never unsee the footage of what I saw, the violence of it. I pray for the people who took any pleasure in that. There's not a single person in the world that I would wish that on. And least of all, someone with a heart like Charlie's. He loved his family, he loved his wife, he loved his country. And he didn't deserve that ending. He's really young. But I know that we will carry the torch. I will never allow the memory of Charlie to be forgotten, obviously, because there is no Candace without Charlie. We came up in politics together. And so I don't know what else to say, guys, other than I'm in a lot of pain right now. And I love you, Charlie. And, I'll see you when I'll see you.
Yeah. So one thing that I want to add here is, it's really interesting because I think that the hypocrisy I've been seeing is crazy. This is how I think many of us felt or still feel in the Black community every time we see a Black person is killed unjustly, by the police. Every time we see another incident of police brutality. This is exactly what many of us were saying. And I said this days ago. Many of us were saying when Philando Castile was killed right in front of his child by a police officer. This is exactly what many of us said when George Floyd was killed. And some people have their different theories on that. Candace was one of those people that said he died from one thing and not from that. Regardless, it was interesting. Even at that time, it was like she wasn't willing to see the humanity there. She wasn't willing to see that a police officer having his knee on George Floyd's neck was inhumane. And also, according to the Minneapolis Police Department, that broke protocol, that was not what they taught them to do. So it's interesting that now it's like I'm seeing it online as well, whereas like conservatives are saying people need to have empathy. This was a human being, but that is exactly what we were saying. And we still say every time there is a Black person that is killed by the police, an unarmed Black person killed by the police, this is a person, this was a father, this was a this. And listen, I watched over the years, people make memes about George Floyd, Philando Castile. I watch people like show some very graphic, disgusting images of what should be done to them or should have been done to them. There was no empathy. There was no sympathy there. And so what you are seeing now, the reactions that you're seeing from Some, not all, some people online, and I'm not one of them that has done this, but what you're seeing from some of those people online, it is a response to what was done during those police killings that made national news. And there were some conservative accounts that took no empathy at that point in time. So you are seeing a direct response to that. This is something people got to think about. I said it back then. That's not right. I say it now. That's not right. But you're starting to see that some people are inconsistent when it comes to this. So let's think about that. To add to this, Tucker Carlson was recently on Megyn Kelly's show, and he also says something that supports what is said in that gray zone article, what they heard from his friend, their source. Listen to this.
He was one of the only people, I mean, truly one of the only people to go to the president whom he loved. He loved Donald Trump, like personally as well. And I think the president really loved him in a real way. But he was one of the only people to go to the Oval Office and say, sir, I totally understand and think Iran's really bad, but a war with Iran is not, is something that could really hurt our country. I mean, boy, that was an unpopular position. He didn't need to express it. Oh, of course. And he did it again. He didn't have some weird agenda. He wasn't mad at anybody. He was for his country and he was for doing the right and wise and difficult thing. And he said that. He went to the Oval Office to say that. He took massive abuse from his own donors, which is also something that you don't see people. And he loved his donors. It wasn't a hostile thing, but they had a different view. A lot of them, not all, but a lot. And they expressed it to him in a very intense way. I know because he showed me. And he said, look, I understand your perspective. This is my perspective. And we're going to do what we think is the right thing, the wise thing.
In that way, too, he was the voice of young people. I mean, there are no young people in the country anymore supporting this war and wanting Israel to continue its bombing campaign. That's just the truth. Look at the polls. And he was in touch with them. And even where his own opinion may have differed from their opinion, he felt like he owed it to them to bring their message to the sitting president of the United States. I mean, it was, that's what's been snuffed out.
Well, as he has been, unfortunately.
See what I was saying? So yeah, like young people, the numbers do show, Megyn Kelly's correct about that. Young people do not support what is happening in Gaza on both sides, on the Democrat side and the Republican side. The numbers do show that. And then also, did you hear what Tucker Carlson said about he was having differences there with the donors? And it's true. And I'm telling you guys, when you start to take that money, people don't give you money because they like you. People don't give you, especially in this business, people don't just give you money because they think, oh, you're doing a great job. Here's some money for my company. They give you money to push a certain agenda. And we need to really start asking another question when it comes to these influencers. We need to start asking how many people are doing that because that's what they actually believe. And, versus that's what they're told to do by their donors. Makes you wonder. Candace also went on to add this as well that supports that gray zone article. It is 100% true that Charlie opposed war with Iran and was fighting with his donors over Israel, as Tucker Carlson just shared on Megyn Kelly's show. This is why I am discomforted by the intentional lie by omission that Bibi told on Fox News about the letter Charlie wrote him. You can see that there. Here's another one from her. This one came out earlier this morning, I believe. Charlie Kirk was fighting with some very powerful billionaires that he took money from over things he was discussing. The pressure on him was immense over the last 2 weeks. The truth will be revealed. The messages will be leaked. And the moment he built will rise up. So does everybody see this? So all of these things, and again, they're on different sides of the aisle, right? Max Blumenthal isn't conservative. He's not MAGA. They're on different sides of the aisle. But what you are seeing is they are basically confirming what the source told the gray zone. It all goes back to the money. So powerful billionaires, sound familiar? When you connect the dots, ladies and gentlemen, there are strings attached when you take that money. And yeah, it's like, oh yeah, you'll get to live a great, luxurious life. You'll get to, have a lot more than you did before. You'll get the opportunity to do those things. But at what cost? What comes with that? It never fails. Always follow the money, folks. Always follow the money. It sounds like Candace may be able to reveal some more information because she says the messages will be leaked. So maybe she has information that she is going to share about this as well. I don't know. We will have to wait and see. But ultimately, I look at this as well as an opportunity for people on the left and people on the right to come together over the billionaire money and to call it out. This is what I'm saying. Candace Owens, now could be your time to say, you know what, this donor money is a problem. And I got to tell you, that's exactly what the ruling class does not want to happen. The billionaires don't want that to happen. The establishment doesn't want that to happen. They don't want people to come together over that issue. That's why they're trying to keep everybody divided right now. I'm seeing all the racist and the racial this back and forth online. That's exactly what they want you to do. They want us to attack each other. The left did this, the right did that. That's exactly what they want to happen, because then you're not focused on the big core issue, the billionaires. And I don't care what side of the political aisle you are on at the end of the day, and especially if you're watching me, we're not billionaires. We're not at the tippity top. Think about it, folks. Think about it. And we'll have to wait to see what else is released. But check out that article from the Gray Zone. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.